recapping week 9 of college football and what it means for the 2025 NFL draft class, updating our top 10 quarterback rankings. Kyle McCord from Syracuse had an abysmal game on Friday night, and that dropped his stock. We're going to discuss this and the other quarterbacks on the list coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damien Martinez. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content each and every single podcast, man. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. Today's show, college football week 9 recap, right? What are the reactions to some of these 2025 NFL draft prospects? You know, we're going to go with our classic quarterback rankings. Yes, we have to update the QB rankings. Then we're going to go into our money makers and bag fumblers, right? Which guys made them some money? Which guys fumbled the bag this past Saturday and their draft stock fell? Then we're going to have appearance, Coach K, Coach DP. We hopping in the locker room. We're passing out game balls for one of the weekend's top performers. DP, let's get into this QB rankings conversation.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, guys, you know we update the QB rankings every single week. Like Keith said, we're going to get into it here. Standing pat for the first 3 to 4. Well, first 3 for sure. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Cade Klubnik. Neither of those 3. Cade Klubnik was on a bye this week, if I remember correctly. Neither of those 3 moved. Drew Allar moved up into the top 4 spot. Jalen Milroe at 5. Carson Beck is at 6 out of Georgia. Dylan Gabriel moved up to 7 from Oregon. Curtis Rourke was on a bye. He hurt his thumb last week. Ended up having thumb surgery. They didn't need him this week anyway. But he's at number 8. Will Howard from Ohio State has been kind of climbing with his performances, playing well this year for the most part from Ohio State. He's at number 9. And Quinn Ewers still is at 10. Keith, I want to talk about Drew Allar, Keith. And when I watched the tape of this young man, compared to what I saw last year, I think coming off the summer, I think I gave him like a late third, early 4th. I'm like, he's got some development to do. I need to see more from him. You know what I mean? The tools are there. He's like 6'5", like 230, 235, somewhere in there. Big arm, everything. What I'm seeing this year, he's playing so much better from the neck up, reading defenses better, reading coverages, but also getting the ball to his targets. He doesn't have – Tyler Warren is one of the better tight ends in this class in college football, but that's his number 1 target. He doesn't have a high-end wide receiver. They do have the run game and everything like that. And he played the first half against Wisconsin. He ended up not being able to play the second half. Or they kept him out. He had like a little knee injury. He wanted to go back in. I felt like the coaching staff was like, listen, we got Ohio State next week. No, like we're going to keep you out the rest of this game. Let your backup go in there. Our defense is doing their thing. We're keeping, Wisconsin's offense isn't rolling, so we're fine. We don't need you in this game. We need you to rest and get ready for next week. But for him, I think he's the guy that he was playing well in that game, by the way. He was playing well in that game. He was 14 of 18, 148 yards, 78% completion. He had a passing touchdown to Nick Singleton on the slot fade in the red zone. And for a big – and Keith, how many times have we seen this? Big arm guys, right? Whether it was Malik Willis coming out, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. We see a lot of these high-end arm talent guys struggle early on to throw with touch and layer passes. Drew Allar knows how to do that, whether it's in the short or intermediate game. I think he's one of those guys right now that when you're talking about threatening for that QB3 spot, if he decides to declare, if he continues to perform well, that game next week against Ohio State, that albeit that knee is ready to go and he is as healthy as possible, that's going to be his statement game. That's kind of foreshadowing to my make a statement player this weekend, but we'll get there on Friday. But that's that resume game to where if he does declare, that's going to be the game of the reason why scouts are saying, listen, we might have you as a first round pick if you go out here and ball out.
Yeah, DP, for me, a large part of Drew Allar's, I guess, resume, right? It hinged upon 2 games. I watched him last year play West Virginia, play good, and I watched him play another opponent. I can't remember who it was, and he played good football, right? And then I watched that Michigan game, and I watched that Ohio State game, and they were bad games. I said this year, because it was the kind of rinse repeat as far as schedules, right? You're gonna play some of the similar opponents, right? And so it's like, hey, if he plays good against West Virginia again, to be expected, right? I want to see you play well, and they don't even have to win the game. And I'm not even saying that you have to go torch them for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, right? I'm just saying solid completion percentage, and more importantly, make good decisions, right? Throw the football away, get out the pocket, throw the football away, scramble for 2 yards. Like, look composed, because last year in those games, DP, he didn't look composed at all. This QB rankings thing coming off of this weekend, entering this weekend, I'm sorry. Right, there was talk of Garrett Nussmeier potentially being the best quarterback in the entire class. But can he challenge for QB1? Right, like that's what was said on different media outlets, and not having him in the top 10. I think people are going to question that. So I guess I'm gonna toss it back to you, right, and get that kind of explanation of why that derives or happens at this stage, right? And then what you've seen in the A&M game to where that happened.
For me with Garrett Nussmeier, he's been on our list for a good portion of the season. I don't think either one of us ever had him as like QB1, but I saw the viral clip that went around and stuff like that and the quotes that were surfacing on Twitter. And I was just like, yeah, that's a bold claim, because Garrett Nussmeier he's played well. He's played good ball. He's made, as people on Twitter has like, man, he's making NFL throws, Sunday throws. And I agree. I agree with that. But the same thing people criticize Cam Ward for, nobody spoke about that with Garrett Nussmeier. He has multiple games of 2 or more turnovers, like multiple turnover games, where you look at it, like, matter of fact, he's thrown 9 on the season. His last 4 games, he has thrown 7 of the 9. Right, the only game he didn't throw an interception was the same game he didn't throw a touchdown. That was against Arkansas, where they blew him out 34-10. But against, what was that? Central USA, 42-10 was the score. He threw 2 picks in that game. Ole Miss, they won in overtime. He threw 2 picks in that game. Against Texas A&M, he made some bonehead decisions or some head scratching decisions with 3 interceptions. You walked into, I think, halftime with a lead. Like,
it was 17-7 at half, I believe.
Connor Wegman, which I'm gonna talk about him on tomorrow's show, when we get into the biggest draft storylines. I'm gonna talk about him and Nussmeier in a vacuum. But Connor Wegman was benched. Like, you know what I mean? They brought in Marcel Reed to give them a jolt. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Keith. Like, I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. We can wait till tomorrow. But like, that was a game where I felt like, I'm not gonna lie, I turned from it. Like, I turned to a different game. I was like, man, I think LSU about to run away with this. I was like, and then I turned back and I was like, what happened? You know what I mean? I watched the interceptions. I'm like, Garrett, no, like, you cannot make this throw. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just throws that and decisions that you don't want to see. And again, he's this is his 8th game as a starter. So it's like, yeah, he's still young, and I understand it. But for me, man, I'm just like, yeah, like, QB1, if we're trying to say that, hey, we can't put Cam Ward as QB1, despite him putting Miami on his back, everything like that this entire season, because, man, he puts the ball in harm's way, then how do we feel about Garrett Nussmeier doing the exact same thing? And I'm pretty sure he has more interceptions than Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Nussmeier situation. So if you had to ask me overall, do I think he's a top 10 quarterback in college football? Yes, at this point. The thing is that it's the law of averages, right? And everything averaging out is that you go back to the South Carolina game, right? And there were a couple, I think it was 2 pick sixes, and both of them got called back, right? That's where the mistake would have been corrected at. It's like, man, you threw interceptions that cost his team. You can't be this cavalier with the football, right? I think it was the Ole Miss game too. And even in the A&M game, after he threw, I think the second, might even been after I think it was after the second interception, I think it was supposed to be a smoke screen to the right, and then he was supposed to come back to the left, and it was an opposite hash throw. And it was just like a stop route or something, right? Like it wasn't anything unique. And the DB was standing right next to the wide receiver, like they was both standing looking at Nussmeier, and he just threw it, right? And that's the type of things that can't happen because that ball probably should have been intercepted also, right? So I look at it and I just say it's kind of like the law of averages, and it came close to being learning lessons, right? And I think finally, 2 days ago was a learning lesson, right? Saturday was a learning lesson. Like, hey, okay, we have to clean up a couple of these things. So, but I thought it was an interesting conversation. I know people are going to ask. That's why I say we have to have the conversation about it. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. We're going to money makers and bag fumblers. Which prospects made themselves some money? Which prospects lost themselves? We're going to talk about that coming up next.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon NFL. That's linkedin.com/lockedon NFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Guys, go download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Money makers, bag fumblers, stock up, stock down. Keith, a guy that we highlighted, I believe it was like 2 weeks ago, was like, man, like, where you at? Like, I think we were like, it wasn't really him. It was a situation. Well, it feels like the situation is getting better for our guy, Damien Martinez, over there in Miami. Yep. Feels like that situation is getting a little bit better for him, Keith. 2 weeks ago against Louisville, in that shootout of a game, he had 12 carries, 89 yards rushing, and that touchdown and that run that kind of sealed the game for them. That was just kind of resembled beast mode, right? And this young man's built like a beast mode type of running back, 6 foot, 230, 232. He's a powerhouse runner with great leg drive. Well, against Florida State, this was the first game where I felt like Miami and the run game and the coaches said, Cam, keep the cape in the closet. Don't step out. Don't even step into the phone booth. Grab your suitcase, grab your glasses, and just go to work. We don't need you to carry us today. Damien Martinez had 15 carries, 148 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 10 yards per carry. Keith, again, in a loaded running back class, and I talked to a source close to him. The word is that he's more than likely going to declare. You know what I mean? And if that stands pat and he declares, like with his size, at the end of the day, that's what NFL GM's still going to look. They're going to look at Ashton Genty, and I think I tweeted this out. Ashton Genty got all the numbers, the fanfare, everything. But they're going to still be teams that said, listen, man, I'd rather get me an edge rusher because we can't rush the passer. The Atlanta Falcons, you don't need a running back, but, just a team that can't rush the passer. Like different, like the Arizona Cardinals, stuff like that. Like teams are going to want to go somewhere else and get a position of need and then get a running back maybe day 2, second, third round. Damien Martinez helped himself, especially these past 2 weeks, but especially on Saturday night, on Saturday afternoon or evening, Saturday evening. 15 carries, 104, 48 yards in the touchdown, 2 touchdowns. Like he had a good game, man.
Yeah, no, that's good to see, right? And when I was watching the game, I'm like, okay, there we go, right? Like because you happy. I guess the best way, right, is to see him start balling and start performing, right? Because you didn't want that situation that we talked about, as far as with him losing draft stock and transferring from Oregon State and then not being a good situation. You want him to play well, and guess what? That was wasn't a bright lights. It was supposed to be. If Florida State would have been who they were supposed to be, right? It was supposed to be a bright light moment, but
supposed to be.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, and it just didn't turn out that way. But it is what it is. DP, my guy for a money maker, I'm going to go with. I have 2 guys real quick. One, Brennan Presley, the wide receiver from Oklahoma State, listed at 5'8", 175. He had a pretty good game against Baylor, and he was a guy, DP, I seen in person earlier this year, right when we went to the Oklahoma State-Utah game. Seen him in person, one of those shifty wide receivers, right? And I don't necessarily have a draft grade for him, but I feel that he's a draftable prospect, right? And whether he goes in let's say late 4th or early 7th, right? He's one of those guys that even if he goes undrafted, he understands how to play football. And I think that his usage will be that, hey, this guy can borderline make a roster, if not be a high camp priority type guy, right? And then he ends up being active a couple weeks and the team's feeling like, you know what? I really like this guy, right? And I think that he's an NFL caliber player. I think he finally touched 100 yards. The reason why he touched 100 yards or hasn't touched 100 yards before Baylor game is not his fault. I promise you that passing attack over there is struggling big time. The other guy I want to mention, DP, you always talk about this tight end class, right? Being talented. Well, go ahead, throw another name in there. Vanderbilt tight end Eli Stowers. He had a touchdown against Texas. 3 games this year, he went over 100 yards, right? Had a big game against Alabama. Had 6 catches for 113 yards. He's sitting there right under 500 yards and 3 touchdowns for the season. But he's one of those flex tight ends, DP, one of those guys that you can motion out, do some things with. Former quarterback. He's a former quarterback, and now he's playing the tight end position. And you can tell because he's kind of just on the same page with their quarterback, right? And I believe, so this is how crazy it is. They were both so Eli was a 4 or 5-star quarterback coming out. I think he went to Texas A&M. Then I think he transferred to New Mexico State, I want to believe, to play quarterback.
Yeah.
He got beat out. I think Vanderbilt's quarterback is named Diego. So he got beat out by Vanderbilt's current quarterback. So they were both at New Mexico State together. And then they both transferred from New Mexico State to Vanderbilt together. And now Eli is playing tight end and Diego's playing quarterback. So it's a fun story. It's an interesting story.
That's crazy.
Yeah, how all of that unfolded because they went there to go compete. When Eli went to New Mexico State was to beat him out, but Diego beat him out. Eli moved to tight end, and then now he's playing really good football. Eli playing tight end, and he can be a draftable guy. He has good athleticism, good feel for the game, good run after the catch ability, fluid mover. So just another tight end to add to the list.
And you know what's crazy, Keith? When I was watching the game, and I saw him just the way he moved, like you said, fluid. A name popped in my mind. I don't know if he's going to hit the same athletic threshold because even though he played tight end in the SEC, he looked like a receiver, and the same thing in the NFL. Evan Ingram with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
Like, similar build. I think, Evan Ingram's like a 4'4" athlete, but I just remember watching Evan Ingram. I was like, he's not a great blocker, but man, he is a mismatch as a receiving option. And that was when he was, in college, and the same thing has panned out for him. It's crazy, players leave the Giants and they get better. Sorry, Giants fan. I didn't mean to do that to y'all. I'm just joking. You know what I mean? But nah, I think Eli Stowers kind of comps to him a little bit. I want to see where he tests, but I like that call out, Keith. I'm gonna go to another pass catcher, man, who had himself a good day, and that is Tez Johnson. It's crazy, Keith, that we are, back-to-back weeks. We saw Evan Stewart pop up in this offense, like, okay, we're trending in the right direction. And then Dylan Gabriel said, nah, not really. We're going right back to Tez Johnson, 6 for 102 and a touchdown. And then the touchdown, he had where, he just made a really great play, be able to work back cross field, cross the defense, work across the green, and then finish the play, and be physical. He also had another like crazy catch where he was kind of in the flats. I don't know if it was like supposed to be a screen or anything, but like the ball wasn't like on target, and he just kind of went up and got it with one hand, caught his balance, and then started working down the right sideline and made play after the catch. But like, he's a good route runner. And you think about those offenses that want their slot receivers to run those option routes and the jet motion and the orbits and stuff like he is going to fit that style of offense and that style of passing game, Keith. But I really like what I'm seeing from Tez. He's having a good season so far this year. 63 receptions, 638 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. He's going to be a guy that's going to be – he's not going to be for everybody. He's 5'10", 165 pounds. Those people who look at football players like, I want my player to look like a football player, like those people who think like that, yeah, you're not going to want Tez Johnson on your team, right? Mm-hmm. I can tell you, for example, the Green Bay Packers would never draft Tez Johnson because they have a height, weight requirement for their draft prospects, especially at receiver. But teams where you look at, think about Carolina, you think about the Cardinals, who you got Greg Dortch, teams that don't mind adding a smaller receiver, that guy that can be that movement piece for him. Yeah, he's absolutely going to fit in. And real quick, Keith, it pains me to do this. Stock down for Luke, bag fumbling for Luke Lachey. And not for I'm going to put this on him. Going back to Iowa was not a good idea. Like, you know what I mean? That was a run-heavy offense when you went back. You know that your quarterback was Cade McNamara, who hasn't showcased to be a reliable, good quarterback at the college football level. If I'm Luke Lachey, I am trying to get into one of these air raid offenses, Keith. I'm trying to get somewhere that's going to throw the ball 50 times a game. Let me showcase my ability. For his draft stock, it's going to be he's going to have to go to one of these all-star games. He's going to have to do well at the combine for people to ignore the lack of production throughout his career.
Yeah, I agree with that, DP. And also, too, it's just for him to be able to showcase more because when I watch him, I don't know if I see Sam Laporta, right? Like, I think he's under that tier of athleticism, like the Sam Laporta, Noah Fant, George Kittle. But even the places like a solid tight end, maybe how like a Tucker Craft profile or something like that. Yes. He's going to need more touches like that at the end of the day to be able to kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like put himself in a good position. But DP, Coach K, we coming out. We going to get the whistles. We got the game balls. We're hopping in the locker room. We're passing out game balls. Stay tuned to see who our best performers were from week 9 of college football.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. But also, guys, with Game Time, they don't just have tickets for your favorite baseball, basketball, NFL teams, what have you. They have concerts, comedy shows, you name it, they have it. Also, what I love about Game Time is the fact that they show the views for all the seats in the venue before you purchase your ticket so you know what vantage point you will have. They have lowest price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout for being our everydayers. Coach DP, Coach K, it's time to hand out the game balls. Keith, I'm giving up. I'm going to Michigan, and I'm going to give my game ball out to my top tight end in the draft right now, Colston Loveland. Against Michigan State, 6 receptions, 67 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns, and we know what this Michigan offense looks like. It's been run heavy. A lot of we don't know what to do in the passing game because we don't know who our quarterback is. And they consistently do a revolving door at quarterback. But in this particular game, for them to score points, they scored 24 points on Saturday, right? They scored 24 points, which is still not to par of what they've scored early in the season. But nonetheless, they scored 24, and he had 14. Basically, he caused 14 of those points, right, with those 2 touchdowns. And again, for me, he consistently shows I'm QB proof. I don't know what tells you a player is QB proof than having to catch passes from 3 to 4 different quarterbacks and still being able to get it done, still be able to get open, and everything like that. Man, he's a good blocker, but to me, he is going to be a high level pass catching tight end at the next level. When you're 6'6", you're 240, you run route the way he can, you have the athletic profile, the catch radius, the ball skills. Again, similar to similar to Luke Lachey, I probably would have transferred. I'm just saying. USC, you still would have been in the Big Ten. I would have went to USC, catch pass from Miller Moss, baby. You know what I'm saying? I would have went somewhere else. I would have called Ohio State, like, what you got for me? You know what I mean? What we working with right here? Because they don't have that high caliber tight end right now. I would have jumped the lines, Keith.
DP, you would have jumped the Michigan-Ohio State lines?
I would have jumped the lines.
That's one of the biggest rivalries, not in college football, maybe in life, right? Like you could bring in wrestling, like in sports, DP, you would have jumped the lines.
I would have jumped the lines. I would have went to Ohio State, like, listen, I'd rather catch passes from Will Howard, baby.
Oh, coming off a national championship?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because looking at it right now, I mean, you got Jeremiah or Mecca, you know what I mean? You got Cardinal Tate. You wouldn't even have to be able to key in on me if I'm in that offense. Go ahead and throw the ball 10 times to me in the middle of the field. Will, I'll take it.
That's tough, man. That's tough. I don't know. Hey, tweet at him. Don't tweet at me, Michigan and Ohio State fans. I'm going to give you the Twitter at the end of the show. I promise. But DP, my game ball is going to. You remember we talked about these freshmen, right? And we had an episode where we talked about all the freshmen. After Saturday night, we got to add Marcel Reed into that, right? I'm giving the game ball to Marcel Reed because Texas A&M, and this is what I think was going to happen. If Connor Wegman continued to play, Texas A&M offense was going to be slow. LSU offense was going to be slow. I think the defense would have still made plays, right? And I think Texas A&M offense just wouldn't have made plays. Marcel Reed stepped in there, DP, and gave this Texas A&M offense a joke. They don't win the game without Marcel Reed. They couldn't. I don't know if LSU defense didn't game plan for him, right? But it looked like they had no answers for him. And that speed was electric. And it wasn't, anything exotic, right? It was read option. It was, different versions of options, right? And his speed was just flat out electric. It opened so many things up for this offense. And I think passing, he went 2 for 2 for like 70 yards. He had the one deep ball. I think it was right after LSU scored to make it a 1-score game, I believe. They came back. And he just, it might have been like the first or second play of the drive. He just chucked that thing 50 yards down the field and said, you know what? My guy's going to come down with it. So I want to give it to Marcel Reed because although he's a freshman, right? First of all, as a draft prospect, it's going to be fun watching him, right? And see what he evolves into. Secondly, when we look at from a draft lens and which teams are going to be able to play more football and what matchups we're going to get, that win was huge, DP, because Texas A&M, I think they are the sole team that doesn't have an SEC loss. In the SEC, I think they're ranked number one.
Crazy.
Which is insane. When you talk about that, remember week 1 when they lost to Notre Dame and it looked horrible? To think that team is now the team that doesn't have any losses. And I can't even remember what big-time matchups. I don't even think they have any more big-time games left on their schedule. So that was huge, DP, because they went out, right? And then you guarantee yourself a playoff spot. You're in a good position. And then also you put yourself to where you open something up for Texas A&M's offense as far as do a 2-quarterback situation, right? Like what a team's game planning for, because the trenches of Texas A&M, they've been good for the past 5 to 10 years, right? Like you go back some years, they've always had good trench players, and you've seen that in the LSU game. At some point, the edge rushers, right? They just turned it on Will Campbell and Emory Jones, and they just got after it, right? Nick Skelton, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, they just got after it at the end of the day, and you've seen them collapse in pockets. But I'm going to give it to the quarterback, man. Marcel Reed is rare that we give it to a freshman, but I'm going to give it to a freshman because they don't win that game without him.
No, we respect these freshmen on this podcast, Keith. I love that. And they go to South Carolina November 2nd. They got New Mexico State. They go to Auburn I think right before or the 23rd of November, they do have the matchup at the end of the season with Texas. So that's going to be a big time game. I expect a ton of scouts out there to watch, see what Quinn Ewers does, see what these edge rushers do. But, maybe a bounce back game for Kelvin Banks and his teammate on the other side. I think was it Williams, the other tackle, the right to
Williams.
So be able to maybe a bounce back game for them, but that's going to be a tough matchup against that defensive front from Texas A&M. So yeah, they got at least one big game left. They got some tough, Auburn and things like that, some tough ones. But Marcel Reed, and we're going to again foreshadowing to tomorrow. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that quarterback situation and more so Connor Wegman and what we think should happen with that situation. But guys, Keith, that's the show, man. You know what I mean? Game ball, freshman getting it. You know what I mean? Top tight end. I love it, man. I love it.
Yep, nah, for sure. With DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Listen, I am Keith Sanchez, and you can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy. I told you I was going to give you the Twitter. Here's the Twitter. That right there is my guy, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. Like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Stop for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's show, perfect prospect fits. All right, we're gonna put prospects to an NFL team. I got one I think you guys are gonna like. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.